Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your team for being with us today. I'm also going to take the liberty of focusing on EI. In 2011, I co-chaired with Roy Romanov the Mowat Institute's review of the EI system. And what we determined then, roughly 11 years ago, I believe sadly still holds true. It is not a system. It is a patchwork. It has carve-outs. It has boutique regulations governing certain regions versus others. It is, as we called it then, a postal code lottery. I understand that the EI Commission is reviewing the system, but what I'd like to know is what are the principles that are being used to review the system? Are they principles of equity, fairness, access, timeliness? We heard from witnesses that this review will take 2 years, and they said 2 years is too long because people are wanting now. Low-income workers, gig workers cannot afford to wait for 2 years. What is your response to them?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question and for your passion on this file. I think a lot about EI, and I really believe that the COVID shining a light on the system that many have known, as you have for a while, has been broken and exclusive, needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed immediately while we balance the request for stakeholders to take action with the request for stakeholders to be included and be consulted on what we should do. A lot of studies have been done on EI, and the principles that I've come to believe kind of underpin the system, and I completely agree with you, the patchwork nature of the system. The system has been built upon by successive governments with different pet projects and different focuses, and some have injected more social policy type parameters to what was, at its core, a basic insurance scheme. And it's really complicated, cumbersome, and doesn't reflect the way Canadians work today. So with that in mind, the principles that I think should underpin a functioning, high-performing EI system in Canada would include access. So making sure there's equity of access to benefits, adequacy of benefits, that people can live in dignity with these benefits, equity across regions, equity amongst workers, limits of disincentives to return to work, and then finally, overall has to promote a healthy labor market. So when I talk about EI and I challenge people to think big and what would you do differently, those are the 6 principles that I keep very close to my thinking on this matter.
Thank you. That was a very fulsome answer, and I really appreciate that. What about timeliness? When should we be satisfied with a review that ends in 2 years and takes another 2 years to implement the recommendations? People are wanting now.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, and I'm smiling because I am not known for my patience within the department as somebody who wants change, and I want it now, and I want to blow up systems and make them better. So rest assured that this is something I'm constantly challenging officials to do. But again, there's a bunch of considerations at play. So absolutely, the changes we put in place temporarily last year and for the next year lay the foundation for where I anticipate the system is going. So all the elements that you see temporarily are kind of in play in terms of a permanent way forward with this particular program. But when we look at how quickly we can do this, it's not just a matter of just determining our desired policy outcomes. We have to, as I said, balance kind of the need for consultation and stakeholder input. We have to look at the cost. Although, these big changes seem really important, they will impact premiums. And so we have to decide if we do one big item that costs a lot, how will that impact the ability for us to do other things as well within the system? There is time associated with making the systemic changes that we want. The order, kind of the sequencing of the changes is going to be really important, because if we decide to do A, B, and C, that means we can't do D yet. Maybe we want to do D first, but then we can't do A first. So there's a real kind of operational reality check that I have to give myself regularly, because I want to do everything all at once. And then, of course, there's just the practical. Can we do whatever change through legislation, through regulation? So it's not just the utopian EI system. It's the practical, how do we do this as quickly as possible? In what order should we sequence the changes? Where do we have to dig in on consultations, or where is there a general consensus? We just have to check in with a few stakeholders. All that's in play, and that's how we are trying to mitigate the frustration that I think you're alluding to, or maybe outright saying that I share.
Thank you, Minister.